4.1 Workplace Exposure Limits. The use of workplace exposure limits, or WELS, is important for the prevention of overexposure of workers to airborne hazardous substances in compliance with COSH. WELS have full legal status under COSH, specifically WELS the Occupational Exposure Limit, OLS, set under Regulation 7 of COSH and are listed in the HSC publication EH40, Workplace Exposure Limits. WELS can be viewed as a maximum or ceiling contaminant concentration in air which must not exceed an on-time weighted average basis. Since both lead and asbestos are not covered by COSH but have their own specific legislation, they are subject to their own occupational exposure limits that are not called WELS. For lead we have occupational exposure limits, and for asbestos we have control limits. A WEL is defined as the maximum concentration of an airborne substance averaged over a reference period to which employees may be exposed by inhalation. There are several important things to focus on arising from this definition. The first is the phrase maximum concentration. WELS are a form of limit. They establish a ceiling of exposure above which you must not go. The second is the phrase airborne substances and exposure by inhalation. WELS are all about the control of airborne substances that can be inhaled. The third is the phrase averaged over a reference period. WELS are a time-weighted average, TWA exposures. So they do not set a limit on the airborne concentration of a substance that might occur briefly for a few seconds. They set a limit on the airborne concentration over a reference period of time. 2 reference periods are used for WELS. 8 hours, WELS that use this reference period are called long-term exposure limits, and 15 minutes, WELS that use this reference period are called short-term exposure limits.